It's kind of nice having the convenience of a grocery store and a Starbucks attached to each other. Plus, the folks at Starbucks, as per usual, are generally pretty nice. The problem is that the bathroom is about 60 feet that direction, and the Starbucks is about 60 feet that direction. I wonder if there's a way to petition putting a bathroom in. But then again, there's a lot of plumbing that goes into that. And of course, this is a cement floor, so they'd have to pull out the big saws and make a bunch of sawdust and a lot of mess. But it does seem like a good idea. Some of y'all may not know that coffee is a laxative, but also it's got liquid in it. It's gonna make you need to go to the bathroom. So, as far as safety goes, of course, I don't want to abandon my stuff for this long. I don't want to have to travel quite that far for a bathroom when I got all my stuff set up. It does make it a little bit unsafe for my things, and as we've seen, that is definitely the case. Looks like the fog is covering the mountains again, which is pretty cool. That's one of the things I always loved about Washington State, all the fog. Waking up in the morning, walk through the fog on the way to school. They don't quite get fog like that here. As far as the stuff that I need to get done, I can't get it safely done at Fred Meyer's, can't get it safely done at Starbucks because, again, the subject matter. When you all start acting weird, I just try to get away from you. I figure that's the best thing to do when you're allowed. But that just don't make any sense, does it? That your life's decisions are dependent upon what your predators choose to do. You say, oh, well, you make your own decisions. Well, you don't get to make your own options. A lot of people wanted me to ignore the fact that people were threatening to kill my friends and family. My friends and family were letting me know that people were threatening to kill them, and only I was speaking up. Now, why is it that all these people let me get treated like I was a schizophrenic nut job for the things that they told me and didn't come forward? But then later on, they wanted to throw it in my face as if it was my decision for them to lie to me. Well, that don't make any sense. Now, I repeat what it is that the cops said, what the cops claimed. I also have the evidence that shows that the cops lied. Many of these people who called me a liar because I repeated what the police said, well, they're not calling me a liar. They're calling the police liars. If you want to be angry at me for repeating what I heard, well, what did you do? Did you look at evidence or just repeat what you heard? Did you look at the evidence or did you just believe whatever other people are going to tell you? Did you look at the actual situation or just the little bits and pieces that people can pull out and pretend I'm a bad guy? That's the problem, is that all of this was decided on the internet, not in court. It was decided based on popularity on the internet. It had nothing to do with right or wrong. Just like here in Tillamook, it's got nothing to do with right or wrong. It's got to do with popularity, and it's got to do with, well, primarily popularity. It comes down to who you know. A lot of people here are friends with Farnsworth. They don't want him getting locked up. At the same time, they know and recognize that he is severely mentally screwed up. But then, of course, you want to pretend that I'm a Farnsworth. No, that don't work. Here's a cute one. It says, I have no time to fight with egos and small minds. And that's exactly what I'm fighting with. Even my own friends, their ego can't allow them to admit that they could ever be wrong. There's also their ego believing that they were intelligent enough to get away with everything that they do and nobody would ever say anything. You gotta be smarter than that. You gotta be smart enough to recognize that just because I have certain genitalia doesn't make me an idiot, doesn't make me mentally retarded. Just because I'm autistic doesn't mean I'm mentally retarded. Oh, Adventist Health of Tillamook. Now here's the kind of crap that they type at us after doctors assault us in the hospital. It says every child deserves a life full of health and happiness. That's why we've made it easy for every child from Manzanita to Lincoln City to have access to great pediatric providers. From preventative care to treatment for an illness, we make it quick and convenient. Are you sure? Somebody's got to travel all the way to Tillamook Adventist Health from Manzanita or Lincoln City for access to great pediatric providers. Access based on what? What insurance do you cover? We know all about access here in the United States, don't we? Like, of course, you got a drug dealing rapist in jail, awaiting trial, but his mommy loves him. So she sends him money and he can make telephone calls, might even be able to bail himself out. But there's that poor hobo. And you didn't have anybody that you could arrest for a string of crimes that happened. So you just pick a hobo. Must be a hobo's fault. You put him through the system. You put his name through the ringer. He must be guilty. I want to tell you something. If you've got a child who's autistic, you got to tell them the same thing that black kids get told by their parents in many places. You can't run away. When your friends run away when the cops show up, you can't run away. They will shoot you. The majority of children killed in the United States by police were out on the streets when they were killed. The majority of the men killed in the United States were on the streets when they were killed. The majority of the women killed in the United States by police were on the streets when they were killed. The majority of those incarcerated in the United States were homeless when they were arrested. Public pretenders don't care. Judges have just as much invested in locking up innocent people as anyone else. A lot of people want to talk about how great America is and about how our 13th American Amendment, that's right, the 13th Amendment, the Constitution of the United States of America, states that slavery is obviously abolished, except what? Except if they're convicted of a crime. We basically made it so that 4 million black people who were slaves yesterday are now criminals today because now they're homeless. That's where the majority of the laws that we're using against the homeless and the disabled today came from. The 13th Amendment. That's right. Jim Crow laws were based on the 13th Amendment, but not just the 13th. They were also based on the Bible. Matter of fact, that's one of the things that kept slavery alive in the United States for so long, is that in the Bible it tells you how you're supposed to treat your slaves. Meanwhile, we still have slaves in the South picking cotton in fields, chained to one another, in bright orange jumpsuits. The Roman rental agreement. This is also one of the measures that was passed, especially in the South, that carried nationwide. The Roman rental agreements basically made it so that if you didn't own property, you have no rights. You couldn't own property unless one of your predecessors had owned property. It was very similar to many of the laws in ancient Greece, depending on what Greek state you were in or city-state. There were some of them where women had a lot of rights. There's also places like Athens where the equivalent of their patron saint, their Aphrodite, their Athena, well, depending on where you were at, the cities were all named after some deity of some sort. All of them. Or mythology. But, of course, Greek democracy came from Athens. Athena is their patron god of Athens, a woman. And yet women had almost no rights there. No right to own property. The Roman rental system basically made it so that anybody who was poor fell under the same guidelines as a woman. So if you were a man back then, you may have the right to vote, but you may not be considered a citizen, and if you're not considered a citizen, you don't have the right to vote. It's amazing, isn't it? Anyway, the Roman rental system made it so that price gouging is acceptable. The Roman rental system made it so that most people were going to be too poor and would have to live in a poorhouse. And that was a bad thing in the South. If you had to go to the poorhouse, then you were a shameful person. How did we end up with chain gangs? Well, that come down to the southern idea of adaptability. Their economy was based on slavery. Slavery became illegal for just straight up civilian ownership. But now you've got state-owned slaves. State ownership of those slaves, which meant that the South could use as many of those homeless black people as they wanted to rebuild the South, to force them to rebuild the South. These same black slaves who had just been freed get arrested for being homeless and forced into chain gangs. And Adolf Hitler and Fritz Sauckel, these are the guys who helped to mastermind the downfall of the Jewish insurrection. Well, it wasn't a Jewish insurrection. It was just outright hatred and blaming the wrong people. Kind of like here in the United States. Sure, you know it's Congress that's screwing you over. You know they're pandering to the wants of rich conglomerates and morons. You know they don't care about you. But they tell you to go after the homeless, and that's who you go after. They tell you to hate the mentally ill, and that's who you go after. They lock us up without us committing any crimes. Our guilt is already assumed, and these officers know it. These judges know it. These public pretenders know it. And you, the American public, know it. You play on that bias just as much as they do. You're aware that it happens. And when you want to argue about it, what you're doing is showing that you're just as disgusting as anyone else in the Nazi regime. Oh, we're not killing Jews. We're not putting Jews in ovens. And then here in the United States, oh, we're not killing the homeless. We're not forcing homeless into ovens. We're not using them as our go-to when we can't find the culprit. Them Roman rental laws. Now, of course, we got rid of the Jim Crow laws, right? Sort of. Those ones only referred to the color. When we're talking about the 13th Amendment versus Jim Crow laws, we're talking about a difference of night and day. We're talking about one set that allows slavery and the other set that says you have to drink on a different water fountain. Well, there's many places where it's exactly the same today for us disabled folks. There's people who think that they'll catch mental retardation if they drink off the same water fountain as me. No, I'm not mentally retarded. The Roman rental system just makes it too expensive for the working class to own property. It forces them to work their entire lives for basically nothing. The promise of more than nothing, but it's an empty promise. Well, let's take a look at one of my dead friends here real quick. His name is Tommy Gallia. Here he is. I'm gonna take my calls and hangs up on me through Facebook Messengers. I'm gonna fucking die is what he typed. Here's 10/18/2015. This is my birthday in 2015. This is when I hurt my back. It's 6:37 a.m. here. I am in a lot of pain, and here I am asking if he's okay. Yeah, that was my birthday. He sent that it went to the wrong person. I saw this message, seen by Tommy Gallia, February 12th, 2018. I sent it January 10th. Now, where's Tommy Gallia today? Tommy Gallia, aka Onyx, 69 friends, 17 mutual. Where is he today? This is from March 4th of this year. It says, sad to see another year without him. Never got to know my brother. Really wish I could have. It's Tommy Gallia right there. There he is again. What did he post his profession as? Professional shoplifter at Safeway. He's also friends with Benny Knoll. He called him Pastor Benny. And Mr. Potter. Tommy Gallia died. Money cannot buy happiness, but it's more comfortable to cry in a Mercedes than on a bicycle. I studied computer science at Chabot College. I actually gave him a computer while I was there so that he could help others try to make himself some money as a computer business. It didn't work out that well. That's because there's an officer by the name of Officer Day, and she decided that it was okay to, well, I had just bought a soda pop for Michael Pennington. Officer Day came up, and she was insistent that he was drinking alcohol out of it. Well, I had just bought it and just gave it to him. And she was insistent that she was going to arrest him if he didn't give her the cup. So he gave her the cup. She sniffed it, realized there was no alcohol in it, and threw it down. It's spilled all over Onyx's computer and on Michael Pennington and on my shoes and on Tommy Gallia. But who cares? Police officers can do whatever they want to us, especially if they're female, right? We must be to blame if it's a female who harms us. It must be our fault. We could not possibly ever hold any of these people accountable because they're not accountable. They don't feel they should be, and society doesn't hold them accountable. So who cares? I'm pretty well stuck on this until noon. That's when Jared Scudder will wake up. Got a lot of dead people on my friends list. Tommy Gallia is not the only one. So there's a phone number of a guy who's been harassing me, and he just messaged me again. So of course I took a screenshot of it. This guy was trying to pretend like he was a friend of mine. His name is Rob, and I apparently met him in Nebraska, gave him my phone number and gave him some of my evidence, and then I called him out as a scammer, and he showed his true colors. He also just showed his hand. He showed that he wasn't actually somebody who was trying to get me my stuff back. He's a stalker. Yes, I still have stalkers after all these years. And when you guys want to interrupt me and say, well, why would they do that? You know what? You ask them that. The question isn't why they did it. Their motivations are their own. It's whether or not they did that is the issue. If they actually committed these crimes, you arguing over why they did it is arbitrary. Why don't you take a look? Why don't you take a look at the stuff that I send you? Do you think people would treat you well if those things were said to you? Probably not. I'm gonna pee myself. This isn't Starbucks.
Huh?
This isn't Starbucks.
I know, I got you guys.
Alright, so we're gonna post up about this Nazi feller. See, that's the thing about not allowing someone to defend themselves, not allowing them to show evidence, forcing them to do this in public, forcing them into a situation where they literally will not have the resources ever to be allowed to defend themselves. So we're going to get this scammer's number up again. All right. Time for me to take my little teeny tiny bladder, drain it, and